Hi everyone, welcome to Activating Genius, how to get your child into a top college and set for a happy, successful life. Today we have the good fortune of interviewing Jake Lewis, who is the founder and director of GAP at Glenbrook, a GAP semester program in the Monadnock region of New Hampshire. He's a storyteller, a writer, a skilled outdoorsman, and a father. Jake has guided dozens of youth and young adults on wilderness-based initiatory journeys into the wilds of New England. Ever curious about the human experience, Jake brings to his work a deep study of the human psyche, a playful spirit, and reverence for the transformative potential of participating wholeheartedly in our myriad communities. Jake holds a self-designed Bachelor's of Arts in Environmental Philosophy from Bates College and is a current scholar of the Orphan Wisdom School and of the Animas Valley Institute. Jake is a certified wilderness first responder, wilderness medical associate, and lifeguard with the American Red Cross. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and have this conversation.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about the program that you offer, so people have an overview of what's involved in the Gap Year program that you offer.
Absolutely. So GAP at Glenbrook is a semester-long program, and it takes place in the fall here in New England, and an awesome time to be really embedding oneself in the natural world and the joys, as we like to put it, the joys of a handmade life. The program has two main limbs, and they are broken down throughout the semester in the following way. It can actually be helpful to understand how it goes and what the program is about. If you hold up the four fingers of your hand and tuck your thumb behind your palm, each of the four fingers of your hand are a week-long intensive on our program, and the space in between is either a 2 or 3 week phase, we call them. And the intensives are when we are out on the land, whether that's in the 180 acres of forest that are part of the Glenbrook campus, or whether we're further afield in the White Mountains or the Rangeley Lakes region. And those intensives are where we engage in two parallel courses of exploration. One, learning wilderness skills, things like making a bow drill and a friction fire, or different types of shelter in the forest, or of course just exploring wild places on a canoe trip or a backpacking trip. But alongside those hard skills, we are also using the wild as a mirror for each GAP student's inner landscape, and using those wild experiences to try and draw something out that is actually very human, even though we're in this wild space. On phase, when we're back at camp, at base camp, the GAP students are living in a house all together, cooking meals for themselves, learning alongside our culinary director here, and really getting their hands dirty, both literally and figuratively, in everything that happens here at Glenbrook, which is a rough microcosmic estimation of what it takes really to be alive on this planet, and what is asked of us to feed ourselves and house ourselves and take care of the things that are entrusted to us. So that's why I say a handmade life. Not obviously, not everyone's not making the very clothes on their backs, of course, nothing like that, but yeah, learning about the farm and the garden and the rhythms of that space, and the hard skills of working in the wood shop or different building basics, and of course the myriad skills required for cooking. So these are all sort of at play, among many other things. I could go further into it, but that's a rough overview of what's happening on the program.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know on your website you talk about your semester being divided into 3 intensives, and I'm just going to repeat them here for those who don't know. The first one seems to be deliberate wondering, and the second one is radical self-care and emotional development. and the third one is identity work. And all of these are beautiful ways to talk about intrapersonal intelligence and interpersonal intelligence. Can you tell us how you help students develop these forms of intelligence through your intensives and through your program?
Totally. Yeah, it's great. First of all, just to say it's quite a thing to hear some of those words spoken. It's something that we've written and talked about here at the program, but then hearing someone read off what's on the website, it's different to hear it read than it is to read it. Mm-hmm. And it's funny finding a language to talk about these things. It's such an integral part of being a whole and happy and functioning person out in the world. But it's not necessarily always easy to talk about how we are with ourselves and how we are with each other. In terms of intrapersonal intelligence, I'll tell a little story about that. It's a bit tangential to the particulars of what we do, but I think about it often and share this story with our gappers. I studied theater for several years, both in college and then after I graduated in New York. And my acting teacher, it was just one day, I did a really bad job on a monologue. I really just was not there. And I was beating myself up in a big way. And my acting teacher stopped me and he said, look, you need to be careful. Yes, you did a bad job. That's true. But you need to be careful about how you talk to yourself, because how you talk to yourself becomes who you are and how you are with yourself. It's not just, oh man, this was terrible. I did a terrible job. That actually becomes how you think, and how you think may very well become how you act, and how you act is how you are. So that little story encapsulates something rough that we're going after with how we imagine intrapersonal intelligence. Is what are the different voices that constitute you at any given moment? And it might seem like, oh, well, this is just me. And if you really explore that, you might find that there are different parts of you that react in different ways to the same moment, to the same experience. And we really try to tease that out, because if you understand that, then you can bring all the different strengths that you have innately within you to the table to bear. And you can nurture strengths that you may not feel that you have. You can also account for the ways you come up short, and you can own them as opposed to trying to cover them up or pretend that they don't exist, and then find them flaring up at inopportune moments. So, and this, for teenagers, this line of inquiry, this type of exploration, they're usually really hungry for it, because, on the one hand, in a sort of joking way, who doesn't want to think about themselves a little bit, right? Like, get a chance to talk about yourself. Right. So that's nice. But more importantly, teenagers are at an age where they're really coming into an awareness of how people are with each other and how they are with other people, and who they are in the world, or who they might be. And they're looking for models. They're looking for roles. I think my history as an acting student and as an actor comes into play in a surprising way with my work here that I hadn't anticipated. Because teenagers, and a lot of people well into different ages of life, are trying on roles to figure out, who am I? And then this relates to the interpersonal part of what we work on, because if you're just doing that in a vacuum, if you're doing that alone, trying on different roles, you're not getting any information back. Right. But if you're doing that exploration in a group, well, you usually are, maybe not on purpose, and you're getting feedback from the people around you. Is this working for this community? Is this working for this community? This type of person I might be. And so we have some intentional parts of our curriculum that focus on that, so it's not so much guesswork. But it really requires the the group to be able to lean on each other, to lean on itself, so that other people can act as a mirror and help you see things about yourself you maybe didn't notice. Usually, people find that the group sees a lot of really great things about an individual that individual didn't notice. That's more often how it goes, and it's no surprise to me, anyway.
Yeah, that's really good. And, this is definitely something that you usually don't find in school, this kind of exploration, maybe indirectly through, reading literature in English class or something, but that kind of self-reflection and being encouraged in that process, especially when you're out in nature and in a whole different circumstance than what you're used to. I think that definitely helps.
Yeah, we talk with students, and often I talk with parents a lot as well, about this is in no way, of course, to besmirch or smear at all what's happening in schools. There's an amazing acquisition of knowledge in even poor schools. You're learning a lot of things. I think what we are wondering about in the GAP semester program is, why are you learning, not necessarily why you're learning all these things, like maybe the student in the back of pre-calc raising their hand and saying, why are we learning this? We're never going to use this. And that's not the tone that we're asking the question. Yeah. We're assuming that what you're learning is valuable. And we're not only that, but we're assuming that you are valuable as somebody in this community, on this planet, however broadly you want to draw that circle. So why are you learning this? And what are you going to do with this? Why does it matter that you know all this stuff that you know? And generally speaking, when we ask that question, a couple different ways we ask that question, and a lot of GAP students actually get a little freaked out by that question. Like, well, what do you mean? I'm learning all this stuff because I need to. Well, okay, but now you are coming into a time in your life where you get to make choices about things based on what you know, or what you don't know, or what you know that you don't know, or what you know that you thought you knew but now you're not so sure. And being able to really wrestle with that from a place of a place where you're comfortable to wonder is something I think is really valuable to not only to that individual, to that person, but to anybody that person is interacting with, whether it's in their circle of friends or their family or their job or their school. These are people that I've been drawn to my whole life, who ask themselves hard questions and deep questions and are not afraid to ask them out loud. It always draws something out of me and out of other people around them when I see that happening. It's like, wow, yeah, you're really digging into life and getting a lot out of it. There's nothing it's not passing you by.
Right. Well, yeah, and I think that's it's not easy to do this because you have to dig deep and be uncomfortable sometimes because the answers are not always there. It's kind of entering into the unknown on some level.
Yeah, and I think that's why this kind of exploration fits so well into a GAP time, and why it can be hard to find in other places, because not everybody is interested in taking whatever chunk of time and whenever in their life to do that, to dig in this way, whether through external circumstances or internal circumstances or what have you. It's not always an option. It's not always preferable because there isn't a lot of. It's hard to be really getting at the root of these kind of things, and also simultaneously doing quite everything that you were doing at the same time. just before maybe you were engaged in these questions. People can and certainly do, and it's wonderful. And I think that in college, if you seek it out, that was my path. I didn't take a gap year until you could say I took one after I graduated, several years after I graduated, but I went straight from high school to college. And when I got to college, my self-design major kind of speaks to this. I hit the ground in college saying, all right, I'm looking for people here who are gonna make me scratch my head about stuff I thought I knew. And so you can find it. You don't have to take a gap year to have that kind of an experience. I think a gap year is uniquely suited for it, but it's not by any means the only way to engage with inter and intrapersonal understanding.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so important these days to do that. I do tell my students, I encourage them to develop as many different aspects of their personality and intelligence as possible, because you'll be more whole when you do that. But I have to say, just to be honest, when I encourage them to develop this kind of inner knowing and intrapersonal intelligence, it's hard to guide that process. So I think that stepping away, or using breaks like summer break and things like that are definitely more conducive to that kind of exploration, because it is hard, like you said, to do it when you're in the thick of your life and you have all these things going on and you're busy, homework and all these things. So I think that's a really useful thing to do, either in gap year or during summer breaks or winter breaks, or whenever you have time to just step back for a moment and do some intentional inquiry. And I love these phrases, deliberate wondering. We really thought about those words and what we wanted them to mean. I've started thinking a lot about etymology recently in the last couple of years, which had you asked me about that several years ago, I would have said, what, etymology? I don't know, but that sounds boring. But it's fascinating, the history underneath words, and that they still carry, even though we don't necessarily think about it. But you were. I may come back to that point, but to speak to something you were just describing, and this is the way we talk about this with our GAP students here, is you need a map for this kind of wandering. It can be counterintuitive to have a map, but not necessarily have direction in that moment. I'm actually about to give a short talk about this at a conference with the Gap Year Association and the Association for Experiential Education in just a few days about direction and wandering and the map and this whole idea. But the thing I say to the Gap students is trying to offer a map here for you to go on this deliberate wandering, this radical assessment, and radical as in to the root, not radical as in fight the power. Although often those things line up, but that's not what we're about. But radical to the root, right to the base of things. You need a map for that, because it can be really disorienting to stop and go, wow, wait, I was reading the Odyssey in class for my I don't know, whatever, maybe an AP class, and I started thinking about where does the story come from, and what does the story mean at all in the modern world? And maybe I start thinking about all of the sacrifices I have to make just to get home. Do I even want to get home anymore? What is home to me? And whoa, all of a sudden, hey, whoa, what are you doing? You're asking some heavy questions. It can be really disorienting. So having a map is really important, and being comfortable in the bounds of the map
knowing that the map is not the territory, it's not the same thing. Having a sense of what's going on is not the same as what is actually going on, and being okay to wander and not necessarily be afraid of getting lost. That that's not the same. Wandering and wondering are not the same as being lost. And so there are several bodies of work, great, well-researched and well-regarded bodies of work that pertain specifically to this kind of inter and intrapersonal inquiry that are very much related to the theme of this telesummit on different types of intelligences. I would direct. Can I direct people to some resources? Is that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Yeah, I would direct people who are intrigued by some of this and they're maybe wondering about, okay, well, what kind of map are you talking about? There's a fellow by the name of Bill Plotkin who has done a body of work that he started the Animas Valley Institute, which is an organization where I've taken some classes, and he has a book called Wild Mind, and it offers a couple different types of maps for how we might understand our inner landscape. Is a way I might put it. I won't go too far into it right now, but it's worth investigating, especially in regards to this intra and interpersonal type of intelligence, and understanding that the different modes of ourselves that we bring to different life experiences and different communities, and what those modes have to offer, and ways that they might get in the way sometimes as well.
Okay. Is that something for adults or teenagers or both?
It's definitely written for an adult audience, but part of my project with this semester is to bring that map to teenagers. Yeah, it's definitely, the Bill Plotkin is trained as a psychologist. Or yes, I think psychologist. I always get psychology and psychiatry confused. I think psychologist. And anyway, and so he's writing from some of that Jungian perspective, and it can get a little technical at times. But I've actually introduced some GAP students to the book, and they love it because, again, even if they don't agree, it gives them something to chew on. Right. And then they can decide, I'm not into this, but I have a language now. This kind of goes back to language and etymology. I have a language now to think about some of these questions that I haven't really understood how to talk about with anybody yet. So
yeah, and especially as you talk about these things, that I'm beginning to remember, work that people have done on rites of passage, and it sounds like the program that you're offering is kind of like a rite of passage on some level, kind of getting in touch with oneself and in nature and other people. And I know part of what you do also is have students go on a solo journey during the time that they're there.
Yeah.
With you, a solo quest. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. I'm glad you asked that question, and I'm actively wondering about this. Literally in the days before our call, I've been talking with my co-leader and wondering about solo and this language, rite of passage, because on one hand, in one way, that is what we're after, is to be really intentional about marking a transition from I would actually say it in this language, marking transition from a childhood mindset to an adolescent mindset. And adolescence, I think, is sort of a maligned word in our society, maybe tacitly, but it's a fascinating time of really grappling with who the heck am I. It often plays out in really kind of challenging ways for everybody around an adolescent, and I think we're in a hurry to get out of that stage. And I think that does us a disservice as human beings to say, quick, I'd rather be an adult by the time I'm 17 than an adolescent until I'm 25, right? And I'm not advocating for the latter by any means, but I think in an attempt to get out of this questioning stage, we end up actually staying in it a lot longer than we would like to and like to believe. But anyway, that might be a whole other telesummit conversation. But so rites of passage, we want to intentionally mark that transition. However, the question that I've really been wrestling with, and this goes back to the inter and intrapersonal, I think, in a way, is a rite of passage. Part of what makes it a rite of passage is that people around you, your community around you, recognizes that you have made this passage. And while that's true on the program, it can be hard for that to translate to the communities that the students are returning to, or to the communities that they're about to form in college, because it's not necessarily something that is widely sought after or valued per se in our day and age. There's a I'm not sure he's teaching there anymore, but a former professor at Keene State College. Keene State is down the road from us. A guy named Len Fleischer, who wrote several different great articles about college as a rite of passage and what that means and what that looks like. And spoiler alert, but no surprise maybe to some people, when polled, the majority of college students will rank binge drinking as the rite of passage, which is definitely an impoverishment of that notion. And these things take on the shape of the community that they're in. So we really strive to wrestle with that, with what a rite of passage could be, knowing that there's this our efforts are hamstrung in a way, because we're a small program, and not only that, but not everybody can take a gap year, and not only that, but not everybody should take a gap year. So it's something that I certainly really wrestle with, and I wrestle with that with parents when they ask me about it. What is this about? And I believe, and my experience has been so far, that my earnest wrestling with it actually encourages people to think more about it than if I said, oh, well, this is what we do and why. But in terms of the solo in particular, it's taken a couple different shapes, but the intention is always to put the GAP students in a lived relationship, a real raw lived relationship with a wild space for 24, 48 hours, and sometimes it's oriented around a fire, sometimes it's not. And often the GAP students, it's the main thing. It's the main thing parents ask about in the application time, and it's the main thing that the GAP students will inquire about as the semester rolls on. And when it's
the most exciting and terrifying kind of thing. So.
And then it comes, and then it happens, and then it's done, and we really, I have found that pretty much without exception, the students surprise themselves with how achievable it was, but not in a way that cheapens the experience. Just that, oh wow, I can actually do that. And there's so many ways you could look at that kind of an experience. 24 hours without a phone in the woods, 24 hours alone, 24 hours. With some students choose to fast. So and that for a lot of them, that's the first time they've ever gone without 3 square meals a day plus snacks. So there's so many lenses to look at the value of that solo, and it does hold a it holds a mythological weight, it seems, at times with the GAP students, and I think that's good. I think it helps it make meaning, again, because it's not an actual community-wide rite of passage, because it doesn't necessarily mean anything to their parents when they come home and say, "Oh, I did a solo." The parents say, "What? What is that?" So to hold this gravitas on program helps it to mean something for the students. And we talk a lot with them about, and this I think is true for anyone with any experience they have. We talk with them about, once they are finished with the solo, we say, look, you need to shepherd your story of this experience, and you need to just be mindful about where you share the story and with whom and how. Because if you just say to anyone who asks, "Oh, I did the solo and here's all the things that happened," a lot of people won't understand what you're talking about, and eventually you'll just say, "Oh yeah, I did this thing. It was cool. It was cool," or "Oh man, it was hard." And that's it, and that's all it becomes. It just becomes a thing on your shelf that you did, and it has no meaning for you. I mean, anybody who studies abroad, if anybody listening to this has studied abroad, especially in college, I think it's keenly, this happens all the time. Everybody wants to know how your study abroad experience was, and if you aren't careful with how you tell the story, you eventually just start telling the same empty story to anyone. And then that's what it means. And this happens to us all the time. And it relates to what my acting teacher told me, I think, too. Be careful how you talk to yourself. Be mindful of how you share things of value from your experience with others, because that interpersonal exchange has an intrapersonal impact. Right. And if you aren't savvy to that, then things that carry great weight for you start to become cheapened, because you're not taking care of them. You're not shepherding them or gardening them, or these other organic metaphors. You can see what I do with my spare time. is I'm out in the garden and I'm running around with the livestock here at camp.
Well, it's really. I really value the way that you're describing all this. I think it's just really beautiful to kind of cherish what you have gone through, and to, like you said, shepherd that consciously and intentionally. It's really
and
beautiful way you're describing it.
Well, thank you, and it doesn't need to be a solo for it to be valuable. One of the things we ask the GAP students to do is to come before they even arrive. We say, hey, look into the history of your name, where your name comes from. And usually the first blush of that activity, that request, they have a couple little stories. And then we talk to them. We leave it to we say, great, we're glad you did that. We're not going to talk about it yet. And we go through some of the program, and they start to get a sense of what we mean whenever we're asking for something. Oh, wow, okay. When we're asking for something, we're really trying to get to the root of things. So then we say, all right, so revisit the story of your name and go back and call your mom and call your grandma. And where does this name come from? And I was actually just reading yesterday several papers about different GAP students' names. And it's amazing the kind of connections they're drawing between their ancestry and their history and their present day, and how this name might impact who they are or who they want to be, and the way they choose to interpret that. And that's just their name. It's not even something they did. It's just something that was given to them. So that richness is available kind of all the time, actually, to us. And that's at the heart of the program. I think for me, it's the heart of my work is to awaken young people to the richness of their days, not only the days that have passed, but the days that they're in. And that leads to rich days ahead, I think.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, and one thing I wanted to ask you about as well is I understand that you help students learn about nonviolent communication, which I have personally found to be very useful. And I'm just curious how you introduce that to students and how that's learned and developed, how those skills are developed.
Yeah, I think it's a really rich, speaking of richness, I think it's a really rich topic to explore. How, again, I mean, I attempt to embody this with just how your words shape your world and the world of other people who are sharing it with you. And one thing that I really like about nonviolent communication, and you can find this in other places as well, is that you hold yourself accountable to your language and your feelings and your responses to things. No one makes you feel anything. They do something and you respond, and there are a number of different responses available to you, and then the practice of the technique is to say, this is how I would like this to be, but I can own that this is how it's happening for me now, and that this is something that I'm participating in, my frustration or whatever. The way this comes up all the time, this will not surprise any parents listening to this. The way that nonviolent communication is most often employed here at Gap at Glenbrook is over doing the dishes, because there are 10 Gap students living in one house, and the kitchen is of a modest size, and so the sink fills up with dishes in an instant. And for some, they're very used to not having to do the dishes, and for some, they may be used to that, they may not be, but they're not really happy with the arrangement of dishes piling up in the sink, and some feel like they're doing more than their fair share, and so the sink in the kitchen is such an amazing classroom for nonviolent communication, because you walk in the kitchen, the sink's piled of dishes, and they go, I can't believe this. This is so annoying. And we say, okay, well, let's think about this another way. Like, oh my gosh, when the dishes are piled up in the sink, it makes me feel crazy. Okay, it doesn't actually make you feel that way. That's how you're responding to this. How do you want this to go a little differently? And just walking through the technique of NVC, and you probably hear me, if you're really familiar with NVC, you hear me maybe using some language from other parallel techniques that we sort of group together under the nonviolent communication header. But I love it. I love it. And some Gap students will say, did you make this kitchen this small on purpose? And it's not exactly true that we made it that small on purpose, but we should have. We should have thought about that. And it's perfect that it's just a little too small, because that conversation has to happen. And it does. And it's a great opportunity to learn how to account for your own feelings and your own experience and the experiences of others, and make change, and participate in that. Not just expect that someone else is going to make it better for you, but that you are right at the root of shifting your experience. I love it. I love that. I think it's critical.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's great. So is there anything else you would like to, there's so much, I just feel like we could go on and on. I really enjoyed this interview so far, but I'm just wondering if there's any last words you would like to share with our listeners today.
Yeah, thank you for that invitation. I think I would say, or I will say, that the opportunity of we talk about this at the program a lot, about that we made up this word, verbifying your life. And I'll explain that a little bit. In the English language, if the word you're using is an Old English word, if it has its roots in Old English, which not all English words do, but if it does, most nouns that we have were once verbs. And this is true in a lot of different languages, especially when the language is closer to its indigenous form. Most nouns in Old English, I will say this, were verbs. And it's a subtle but radical shift when you think about doing as opposed to arriving. And I know from myself that I spent and continue to spend a lot of energy trying to arrive. I want to be the person I want to be. I want to have done the things I want to do. I want to put a period at the end of the sentence of my hopes and dreams and aspirations. And that may very well be a recipe for dissatisfaction. The search for nouns in your life. And what if instead there was almost a submission to the verbiage of your life? It's not about finding balance. It's about balancing. It's never going to feel like, got it. Got everything on my left hand, everything on my right hand, and it's set. And now I can just walk on this tightrope and I'm done. Or walk on the path, I'm done. But rather, no, I'm doing this all the time. And so especially when it comes to inter and intrapersonal knowing and thinking and knowledge or wisdom, there's this idea, I know I had this, of, well, if I just do a couple more things, then I'll get it. And I won't have to really think about it anymore because I'll have gotten it. I will have achieved it. It will be a noun that I did, this thing. And I'm not so convinced that that's true. I'm more and more convinced that the real wisdom of inter and intrapersonal knowing is knowing and living into and maybe even, like I said, submitting to the fact that it is a verb. And that you have to keep doing it. And I think that can be applied to many other areas of one's life, really. And the more I have found, the more that I verbify, so to speak, my days, the more exciting they become. I was just talking about this with my wife yesterday. We were planning a couple different home improvement projects, and one of them is we're building this drying rack to hang up in the ceiling above our wood-burning stove to be able to dry our clothes without running the dryer. And it's been this whole thing, and we're making plans and da-da-da. And I stopped and I said, I don't think that there are many people in the world who are this excited about their laundry. And not only that, but that they would enjoy the process. And I certainly did not love doing laundry, even so recently as after I graduated college. But because I wanted to be done. The whole time I was doing laundry when I was in college or when I was in my early 20s, it's like, oh my God, laundry, can it just be done? And instead, we've turned it in our house into this thing that we're doing. And because it's got to happen. You got to do your laundry. So why not recognize that it's a verb that you're doing as opposed to a thing you have to do? Right. It doesn't always work, obviously. There are mornings when I realize I haven't done the laundry and should have, and it's a cause for frustration. And then I get to nonviolently communicate with myself and say it's okay that you forgot to do the laundry. So anyway, but that's the nice. Language, I like that. I think, yeah. For what it's worth, trying to shift that component, I think, is a nice thing to consider, an important thing to consider, and it plays out in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, Jake. It's like I said, this is one of the best interviews, and I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.
You bring a wealth of experience and a very unique perspective, in working with teenagers. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Participating.
Thank you for those things, and I'll close by saying that in the intrapersonal way we've been talking about, I don't get to do this without someone else to speak with. So you bring this, you actually bring this to me in a way, in a real way. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Activating Genius, how to get your child into a top college and set for a happy, successful life. Today we have the good fortune of interviewing Erica Nelson, who's the Senior Marketing Representative at the National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS. After a major mishap of getting lost for 7 days in 2008 on her first backpacking trip in Alaska, Erica quickly immersed herself in outdoor education. She has dedicated her vocation to gaining the proper training to educate and influence others how to ethically navigate the wilderness and mitigate risks. She earned a bachelor's in psychology and outdoor adventure leadership from Sierra Nevada College, Lake Tahoe, where she led student expeditions, instructed skiing, created and developed curriculum. Erica has become an independent outdoor adventure guide, leading whitewater river and backpacking trips for various organizations. She was introduced to NOLS by achieving her WFR certification and completing a NOLS custom education course in the beautiful canyons of southern Utah. Welcome, Erica.
Hi, thank you.
Erica, tell us a little bit about what NOLS does and what you do at NOLS.
Yeah, absolutely. So NOLS is been around since 1965. We are known as the National Outdoor Leadership School. We are headquartered in Lander, Wyoming, and we take students of any age on leadership development courses, whether that's within 2 weeks, a month long, a semester long, and our longest course is 135 days. We also teach wilderness medicine, so anywhere from a first aid certification, wilderness first responder, EMT, and we also work with medical care professionals as well. And we do a lot of services actually, and focus on risk management as well. So we do program evaluation for administrators. So we take a look at other outdoor programming and make sure that their risk management is up to standard. And we also work with intact groups, so the various organizations and schools that come to NOLS for leadership training. So we kind of combine leadership focus, outdoor skills, technical skills in an outdoor environment in a hands-on learning place.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I understand that you work with high school students as well. There's programs that you offer to students at Phillips Exeter Academy, the Archer School for Girls, Madison Country Day School, a number of different high schools as well as universities and corporations. So tell us a little bit about your work with high school students.
Yeah, so we get a large amount of students that are just wrapping up their high school. After they graduate, they are looking to not quite fully immerse themselves in the college quite yet, or they're looking for a summer programming. And so students come to us starting at age 16. Most of our students come at 18, I'd say, and they can come on an expedition course about 30 days to a semester long and earn academic credit. So we work with various high schools and colleges, and students can earn up to 27 credit hours by doing a NOLS course with us.
And tell us a little bit about, what would be an example of either a month-long or a semester-long course that they do where they get academic credit with you. What would it look like?
Yeah, so we focus on the outdoor skills. So students can come backpacking with us, canoeing, canyoneering, horse packing, mountaineering. We have a variety of skills that we offer. We are also located on 14 different locations around the world. So students can travel, or stay in the U.S. if they prefer. And they are getting immersed in their outdoor skills and then also our leadership curriculum, which is actually what drew me to NOLS, is our leadership development. So so we focus on 7 leadership skills, and so students are actually actively engaging in 4 different leadership roles. And so those roles are designated leadership, active followership, peer leadership, and self-leadership. And so typically the highlight of a student's course and expedition is the designated leadership role. And so our instructors really just kind of, we take students that are novice, they just want to learn. They may not have backpacking or much hiking experience, and that is definitely okay. They can come to us with very little knowledge, just the willingness to learn. And so we take students, teach them how to pack their pack, go over a list of things that they're going to need. We go over safety and risk management and teach them how to read a map, and teach them basic skills. And we're building on those skills every single day. And so typically in the evening, we do what's called like an outdoor classroom. And so students will learn how to set up their camp, learn leave no trace wilderness ethics, and the instructors will then go over our leadership curriculum at the end of the day. And that focuses on our 7 leadership skills, and that also focuses on environmental science. So our instructors are very awesome educators in teaching environmental sciences and human history, natural history, and so every student is learning the same curriculum throughout the course. And so there is an extra option for students to opt into academic credit. And so whether you opt in or not, you're still getting the same educational benefits on all of our courses. And after the course is complete, students have opted into the academic credit will then get an official transcript to take wherever they want to go to either their next college or their high school.
Great, wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about the leadership training that you do. You mentioned it a little bit. I'm curious about it because I'm just curious because when I look at your website, you describe some of the programs that you work with, and there's a lot of business schools here, very prestigious business schools. Looks like you have University of Chicago, Columbia, Northwestern, University of Pennsylvania. So for some reason, all these really top business schools are gravitating to your programs, and I'm guessing it's for the leadership training. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So briefly mention, we have what's called a 7-4-1 model. And so we develop 7 leadership skills, and that includes expedition behavior, competence, communication skills, judgment and decision-making, tolerance for adversity and uncertainty, self-awareness, and vision and action. And then I went over those 4 roles, and then the goal of going through this curriculum is to find your own signature style. And that is through experiential learning. You're basically getting a lot of feedback within your groups that you're working with, along with technical feedback. The outdoors is a really great space to have immediate feedback. If you don't eat all day, you're going to be hungry and you're not going to be able to sustain a long hike. So stuff like that, you're kind of, or if you don't use sunscreen, for example, that also can affect your group as well. So that is kind of transferable skills into immediate feedback, such as sunscreen. If you get a sunburn, it's going to most likely affect the group if you're out for an extended time. So that puts a lot of other people at risk as well, and they have to kind of take care of you. And so it's just really the feedback and the transferable skills that people are getting from the wilderness that you can take back to your own personal lives. I personally have found transference in my own professional career. Taking a NOLS course, which was actually connected to my college, Sierra Nevada College. My final credit to graduate college was to take a NOLS course. And so it was the best decision that this school has ever made because not only was I learning the technical skills in order to lead backpacking trips after that, but I learned and got incredible feedback on my communication skills, how I got to treat others, in a group, and how my tolerance for adversity and uncertainty, and how I dealt with, the weather changes and if my socks got wet, for example, and just kind of little things like that in the backcountry have been transferred into the way that I kind of live my life now. So I think that the draw, is that immediate feedback from a lot of different colleges and universities and, these top schools, looking at our leadership model and actually putting it into practice, and then kind of taking that further into their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this gives, by going on these trips, they get, like you said, immediate feedback because there's so many challenges, and you can't just ignore them. Out in the wilderness with others.
Totally.
Yeah.
And at the end of each day, our instructors are amazing facilitators and debrief guides. So these things are definitely talked about at the end of the day of what went right, and what went really well, and also what can we improve on for the next day to make tomorrow even better. And so with that kind of mentality, walking away from the course, you're able to put that into practice within your daily life as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us any examples of maybe someone that you've worked with, a high school student, and what they learned from one of your expeditions?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a lot of great stories on our Knowles blog, on our website. So there's a lot of different, people kind of walk away with, what they like to describe as a transformative experience. And so a lot of students come to us with not really knowing what they want to do. And so sometimes I feel like I have the privilege of being like a life coach. And so students will say, I was just browsing your website and I want to go backpacking, and I don't know if I'm ready for college yet. What should I do? And so I think a Knowles course can kind of bring a lot of perspective in, not only in our natural world, but also you have a lot of time to reflect, and you have a lot of time to work with a lot of other people that you've never met before. And so it's a great opportunity for those students to kind of get grounded a little bit, find their own leadership style, and kind of move step forward from there. So I would say a good handful of high school students that I work with, call me for advice. And so, and then they call us back or write for our blog in talking about their transformative experience and getting into a really good college. It kind of just resets them a little bit and also develops some learning and growth, some personal growth. Yeah,
great. And what about students who have never gone camping ever before or never really been outdoors before? Because I have a lot of students, these days who have just grown up either in the city or the suburbs, and they're just afraid of going out. I know they'll be with a group at Knowles, of course, but what's your advice to them?
Yeah, that can be a definitely scary thing. I completely can resonate with that. I was never really an outdoorsy person myself, and I would say it's a really great opportunity for a lot of folks to just kind of step out of your comfort zone and want to say yes to something. But I also see the hesitation as well. And so that's a really good question. I guess it's kind of just pushing yourself a little bit and learning something new. And I also want to say that the wilderness, you don't have to go in extreme, mountaineering for 30 full days, if that's not your style. That is completely okay. I'd say even just walking out in the park and spending time in the natural world is also super beneficial. I would say if you're looking for, a new experience, something out of the traditional norm rather than sitting in a classroom or under fluorescent lights, I say go for it. Try something new and really put yourself out there and just go for it. There's going to be everybody on the course is probably hesitant and also scared as well. And so we have student courses about up to like 12 students, I would say, and I would guarantee all 12 are nervous and as scared and vulnerable as well. So it's really great to walk away from a course, and these are going to be probably your best friends for the rest of your life. I'm still pretty good friends with my course mates, and it's really incredible to see students drive through our headquarters, and they're in college in New York or something, and they're on a Western road trip. So they'll want to stop into our headquarters, and they want to talk about their instructors and their course mates. And, I've had other friends that still continue to see their course mates that they've met, on a gap year. And so they're, 30 years old right now. And so they're still talking about when they went on their first NOLS course at 16 and still connected with those people. And so, I would say, it's an amazing experience.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, I mean, there's something about going through hardship together or challenges and then bonding on that level.
Exactly.
In a unique way. Yeah, that's really nice. What do you recommend for students who want to spend a longer period of time? You mentioned you have semester-long programs as well for students who are high school graduates. Right. Is that right?
We do, yeah. Starting around of age 18, we have gap year and study abroad programming, and so these semester courses are typically around 80 to 90 days, and so you're basically out for about 3 months, and we focus on about 3 to 4 different types of outdoor skills, and so that would look like you would go backpacking for the first 20 days, and you would go to our river location and switch to whitewater rafting or kayaking, and then you would move on to canyoneering. So you would be developing all of these different skill types, and growing and learning on those. And then you also get our expanded leadership curriculum as well. And students can earn, up to 19 credit hours for those semester-long courses. And NOLS was actually the first to develop the first outdoor semester. And so we're really proud of this product as it's, we've seen a lot of transformative leaders come out of our programming. And we've also expanded into a full academic year course. And so our year in Patagonia is 135 days, and that is down in Patagonia. And so that is an incredible course where students can learn a cultural section. So you're staying with families in Patagonia. You're kind of learning the language a little bit more, and you're also really immersing yourself in the culture while you're on this year-long. And our semester courses also have a cultural component too.
Okay, so basically you have outdoor expeditions in different countries, and then that is considered like study abroad. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have 14 locations around the world, and just a few examples of where we do homestays and cultural development. That's in India, New Zealand, Patagonia, and East Africa. Those are just some of our locations.
Okay, that's great. And do students also learn any language skills while they're out there?
Yeah, so I would say we mostly focus on leadership development and those outdoor skills and environmental studies. And so I would say if a student is really excited about learning a new language, they're going to have opportunities to learn, I'd say, entry-level type of learning. And so kind of small conversational language will most likely be picked up. If they're already immersed, let's say they're taking Spanish in high school and then they go down to Patagonia, they'll most likely expand on their language. We got a lot of feedback from that. That was something that they weren't expecting, was to expand more on their foreign language skills.
Okay, excellent. What do you recommend for students who are interested in participating in a course with you and maybe their parents are not completely supportive? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with an incredible amount of professionals, that aren't even in the outdoor industry. So we're really excited to work with, NASA, the Naval Academy, and even and do some leadership training for some other corporations that come to us. And so our we've had a lot of great leaders come through, like Mark Randolph, who co-founded Netflix, and so they're still excited about their Knowles experience that they've taken at a younger age, and they're still working on those skills that they learned throughout our curriculum. And so it's not just going outside and camping. It's really refining, your own leadership skill and finding that signature style.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that, especially for parents, it's very confusing these days. There's just a variety of different camps and programs available, and I do feel like there's something unique about what you guys are doing in terms of teaching students to be developing their own leadership skills and being more self-confident in the wilderness. That feels kind of unique. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my favorite exercises that we do is called a no-dose leadership styles class. And so that focuses on 4 different types of styles. And typically a good, well-rounded leader will hit all of these bullet points. And so they're kind of labeled as architects, analysts, drivers, relationship masters, and spontaneous motivators. And so it's really great to see what are the key strengths in these areas of your type of style, and then also, what are some drawbacks to this type of style, and how does that work within a group? And so it's not only just individual, but also collectively together. And so it's really great to see students physically, stand into a quadrant, and look around to see who they're backpacking with and who they're building this community with, and what is their style, and what do they appreciate, how do they appreciate being communicated with, and other areas of how do they prefer not to be communicated with. And so it brings a lot of self-awareness in your own style, and that also brings a lot of awareness in who you're working with and who you're collaborating with, which can go on beyond this Knowles course, is really understanding your own style and how that works with other different types of personalities and other styles as well.
And the skills that the students learn on these expeditions, some of these are like survival skills, right?
I would say mostly. We don't really focus on survival, I guess, but mostly enhancing your outdoor skills. And so, how do you prevent, frostbite, for example, and how preventative measures? We are the leader in risk management in the industry, so we are very precautionary. We do a lot of things to prevent injuries, and then we also work through different adversities that may occur throughout the course as well. So really focusing on communicating and putting everything out there in transparency as well.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Any other pieces of advice you would like to offer to students today? Students or parents, actually.
Yeah. I would say if whether your student or yourself is not knowing what to do, or you already know what you're going to do, say Knowles has something for everyone across the board. Enhance your style, or take on something that you challenge yourself that you didn't know existed, because that you're going to find a lot of confidence within you that you didn't know that you had, and walk away with a great experience with transferable skills.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Erica. It's been wonderful to have you on the interview today, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.